Okay, today's conversation is about business value and the future trends of the metaverse, which is still such a super exciting and fast moving topic. And to help me discuss this today, I'm joined by leading metaverse expert Emma Ridderstad, who is the co founder and CEO of Warpin, a startup that works with major brands like H&M, Disney, and Ferrari to help them with their immersive project. So welcome, Emma.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's such a pleasure. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden, and so is all of our company. So we are 17 people based here.
Very good. I love Stockholm. It's one of my favorite cities, I think, especially in the
Oh,
summer.
yeah.
I think the first
Especially in the summer.
exactly. I think the first time I came to Stockholm was the first day of summer when you had the first warm day. And it was just such a magical experience because all the cafes were open and everyone
Mm.
was enjoying the first sunshine.
Yes, and you will get a whole different experience if you come here during the winter. Then
Yes.
it's dark all the
Yeah.
time. So we get the light in a very short period of time, and then we get the dark for a very long period of time.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you end up as the founder and CEO of Warpin?
Well, I used to game a lot when I was younger, and I came in contact with, the technologies of virtual reality and the concepts of it.
Mm.
So for me, being a sci-fi fan, also, I've always seen that this is the last big technical leap that we're taking when we're moving from 2D to 3D, when we're going back to what's very native for us. We're born into this 3D world, right? So for me, I always wanted to work with this technology when the time was mature for it. So we started this company back in 2016 with the notion of working with virtual and augmented technologies to enhance the human experience and
Mm.
not the other way around.
S- Perfect. So what is the metaverse for you?
So for me, the metaverse is everything that we do today online through our smartphones or on our computer, we will be able to do in the future, but in 3D. And we will be able to do them through virtual and augmented reality, and we will go in between these worlds very seamlessly, helping us to work better, communicate better. Everything I think will change with this.
Good. So for you, the main element is 3D because other people also throw in things like blockchain technology and NFTs. Would you see this as separate?
No, I say that they are a big part of it, but I also see that there are many ways that we will use the metaverse. And I mean, the metaverse is a concept, right? In the future, we're not in the metaverse. Today we're seeing projects and we're seeing things that will, resemblance the metaverse in the future. But there are many other ways that we will be using the technologies that will have such huge benefits for humanity, especially within training and work and education, for example. So, when a lot of people are talking about the metaverse, we're talking about NFTs, gaming, and social and everything like that. But I think the greatest benefits for humanity will be in other areas than that.
Okay, so where do you see the greatest added value that brands can achieve by using technology like augmented, virtual, and mixed reality?
Well, we have been very, locked down through these 2D environment that we have been living in for a very long time. What these technologies do is that they open up a whole new world for us to explore. We can mix this this reality with digital assets, and we can move into whole new areas and experience whole new things. So the added values for brands is, of course, that they can provide experiences to the consumer, and also telling a story and engage consumers and give them experiences that we haven't been able to do before.
Okay, do you have any examples? Maybe some examples of some of the things that you are doing with some of your customers. You've got some amazing brands that you're working with. What are they doing today?
Yeah, sure. So we can take two different examples. We can start off with the augmented reality, for example. So, for example, with H&M, when Star Wars premiered in Tokyo, we set up these designer booths inside an H&M store. And through Magic Leap glasses, you were given this experience where you took a normal black t-shirt and you hung it on the designer booth, and you got to design Star Wars themed t-shirt exactly on how you wanted it, with the sounds and with your hands, giving a very fun experience, but also a very memorable item from that day. So in that case, we're providing, the end consumer with a very fun experience and a memorable item, but also providing data, what types of prints worked and what types of prints didn't work. So we're seeing a lot of those experiments, I think, right now. On the virtual reality side, I would say that what's really, really, really showing a lot of return on investment is through education and training. When people are using virtual reality to train their employees, they can cut costs with up to 80%. You can reduce work-related injuries with up to 45%. And you have a retention that is as high as 70%. So we're seeing, a lot of these technologies now also solving real-time problems that we're having since the pandemic and so forth, for example.
So how is Ferrari, for example, using these technologies?
Yeah, so I can't, really talk about everything that we're doing with all the clients. But for Ferrari, for example, a project that we helped them with was to showcase one of their models in augmented reality. So you could have the car from wherever you are. You could walk into it and see it and experience it on site, even though you're not on site, so to speak. So it's a lot about, showcasing a product or having the product at home and see how it fits in your home, or testing it on yourself, for example, like, hats and glasses and things.
Yeah. So yeah, glasses, hats. I think virtual try-ons are going to be a super important use case, especially once we have avatars that look like us, and we can then actually try on our clothes and jewelry and anything else virtually, which would be, I think, a massive leap forward. And I think we're
Yeah.
getting close to that technology. So how do you feel this technology will impact different and transform different industries, different marketplaces, and transform relationships between brands and consumers?
Well, it's going to be a timeline of different projects that we're going to see, I think, that will emerge and see what flies and will not fly. But of course, you will see a lot of companies, especially within retail, doing all their garments and products in 3D. To be able to work with the products in 3D, I think it's going to be key. And I think that the new consumer will have those types of demands also. So I think it will be very important for companies to start thinking about how they will enter the metaverse and in what sense they will do that. But from the consumer's point of view, I think that you will have so much more information about the brand and the product that you're buying, because this is the first time where you're actually not constricted to a printed ad or to a commercial or to a 2D. You can really work with the product, using the product as something that could take you into the experience. So like working with a normal ad, but making that come alive in 3D and so forth. So I think that we will see a lot of different exciting experiments coming up. But in the future, I think that the majority of us will do our shopping from our homes.
Absolutely. And I think it just creates more engagement and more, as you
Mm.
say, the storytelling element for me is super interesting. One of my favorite examples that I talk about is how a whiskey company they worked with a hotel to create a new whiskey cocktail. And when you order the cocktail at the bar, they give you virtual reality goggles and you stick the goggles on, and then this transports you up into Scotland. You fly over the Highlands, you see how the whiskey is made, where the water is coming from, you fly through the distillery, and you really get this amazingly immersive brand experience. And then when this is finished, you take your glasses off and then your whiskey cocktail is in front of you. And even little things like the living wine label app that I
Mm.
really enjoy, where you simply scan a wine label and suddenly bring stories to life. So for brands, I think it's a super, super interesting time
Yes.
right now.
And it's like you can use the existing product that you're already having, and you can
Mm.
enable that to be the portal into the experience. And to your point, I mean, this technology enables us to engage with more senses at the same time. So it's making it a much more rich experience, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you feel this kind of technology will transform the way we work and play and communicate in the future?
Well, I think it will definitely propel us into a new type of communication and workspace in general. I think that, as I said in the beginning, through work and education and training, there is where we will see the greatest benefits for humanity. Because when we can share digital spaces, when we're not, when we're miles apart, but we can co-create at the same time, when we can cut distances between each other, when we can democratize information and workflows, and we can simulate things in real time, and we can really, really get into it and meet each other in whole new ways. I think that will not only it will bring us closer, but it will also bring up new ways of working that I don't think that we can imagine yet. I mean, we have new glasses coming that says that it will help blind people see, and people who have not been able to work before now has this technology that will help them. And what will that give humanity? I'm very, very intrigued by that.
Yeah, me too. And the evolution of technology is very fast. So when
Mm.
you talk about new glasses, um, Meta will bring out new glasses with eye tracking technology in October. What are some of the other technological advances that you would like to see when it comes to hardware and devices to make the metaverse even better than what we can imagine today?
Well, I think that Meta had some pretty interesting news coming out. We were talking about the focus, that you could focus on something very close and far away, and how many pixels there is. And I think Magic Leap also has this new interesting of, the dimming, so you can go between virtual and augmented. So we're seeing, to your point, all of these technological advantages going faster and faster and faster, right? So where we are right now, what I'm looking for also is a headset that is affordable for
Mm,
people, but still high quality.
mm.
So that's what I'm really looking forward to, the mass adoption of the headset, the iPhone moment, but for the headset moment.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to see when Apple comes out with
Mm,
their headset and what use cases they will be focusing on, because they've always been very good at bringing it to the mainstream
mm,
and finding use cases that people want, that will drive people to adopting new
yeah.
technology.
Do you have
Um,
any bets what Apple would bring forth?
I find it very, for me, I think the use cases are more likely to be around augmented reality. For
Mm.
me, this is I suspect that their glasses will be mixed reality glasses that do both augmented and virtual reality. And for me, the fact that I can project avatars into my own space, for example, so you
Mm.
could actually join me in my office, or we could go somewhere else, that is pretty cool. And I
Yes.
had the pleasure of watching ABBA perform their new concert in London as their
Wow.
avatars, and that was a pretty mind-blowing experience because it felt
Mm.
so real. And if I could take it a step further and have ABBA perform in my own living room, that would be cool.
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
there's entertainment use cases I think are hugely valuable. And then there are big use cases, some of the ones you've already talked about, like in work education in particular, I think is a huge use case. If we can transport our children back into history and allow them to walk through
Mm.
ancient cities and experience them, these are amazing use cases.
Yeah.
What's your guess?
Yeah, but I totally agree with you, and I also think to your point with transporting children, we're entering a space with robotics and artificial intelligence. So we also need to make sure that we cultivate what makes us human,
Mm.
and that is like empathy and creativity. And I mean, empathy, there is no better tool than virtual reality for that. You're 3.75 times more emotional connected to the content that you're experiencing on a virtual reality headset. So it makes it a very good tool for example learning with when you have children who can't travel or so forth. To be standing next to a dinosaur is much more easier to interpret how big it was than reading in a book.
100%.
So yeah.
And I had this amazing experience this year of trying on a haptic suit together with augmented
Mm.
reality glasses. And this would then allow me to feel, for example, what it actually feels like being disabled and
Yeah.
having a lack of certain movement. And you then try to navigate the world.
Mm.
Or I think one of the first use cases of AI people are still talking about is experiencing the world through a ethnic minority view,
Yes.
where you are a black person traveling
Mm.
on a white school bus and what this might feel like. So it's I think the opportunities are huge in terms of all of those things.
Yeah, I agree.
So what are some of the things we need to do to create this metaverse? What are some of the key factors that we need to address to make this the place that we all hope it will be in the future?
Well, I think that from my point of view, we need to take a lot of philosophical discussions and not only talk about the metaverse from a very technical point of view. We also need to talk about what this metaverse can do for us, because there are always, two sides of a coin, right? So, to talk about how we can build a place that benefits the majority of people. And to your point, I mean, the gaming industry is building a lot of the beginning of the metaverse, and it's very male dominated industry. What will happen if we build something that is only built by men, for example, and so forth. So we need to make sure that we have the diversity, to your point before, also when we're building these places.
Yeah, and
That's yeah.
you're so right. And I look at all the major technology trends, be this artificial intelligence, blockchain technology,
Mm.
extended reality, they're all still male dominated. So
Yeah.
how do we encourage more women to take part in these exciting tech developments that will reshape our society in the future? And if we don't have a if the people that create this are not representative of society, then we have a massive problem.
Yeah. I share your concern, and I think the best way to go about it is to also make sure that we talk about these things and that we talk about it from a philosophical perspective. Because what I have noticed in this industry is that it becomes extremely just technical in the technical discussions, and it's not that I, as a woman, don't know the technology behind it. I'm the CEO of the company, but I'm not a programmer. So, to be able to see that we need more people, not only programmers, to get involved in this technology. We need people who know social behaviors. We need people who understand human behaviors. So we don't do the same mistakes as we did with internet, where we have a lot of harassment and bullying, and we cannot just solve it by putting bubbles around ourselves, because then the metaverse won't work the way that we envision it to do. We want to be able to communicate and to build relations. And if we all go around with a bubble around us, that won't really do the work. So to be able to find new ways on how to solve this problematic and to maybe relearn people to communicate again. Sometimes I feel like we lost a whole generation, of gamers into non-communications almost. And I've realized that as a gamer myself, that it's not a very pleasant environment to be in, as from a girl's perspective, at least when I was younger. So there are a lot of those things that we need to address and not just sweep them under the rug and talk about, how we're going to solve the technical issues.
So what did you find were the key problems, and how could this be addressed in the future and made better?
Sorry, again, the key problems for...
You said that the gaming world wasn't a very pleasant experience, and what did you see as the main problems there, and how could a move to a more immersive world and 3D world make this better?
Well, I think that, in a 2D world, you're very anonymous to start off with. So you can be a troll without anyone knowing who you are. As a girl, and I think I can speak for all women online, that it can be sufficient by entering a space sometime as a girl and you get harassed. So it's a very toxic environment, the gaming environment, for many, I would say. So I think that, just onboarding people and making sure that they know that there are other peoples, actually, I think behind the avatars will help all of that. Because when we're sitting in a 2D, we're very numb. But when you're entering a 3D space, already if you get harassed in a 3D world, that it feels 100% more than if you were harassed online in a 2D world. Because it feels like you are there, you're meeting other people, even though it's just your avatar. So I think that those issues will be much more highlighted, much more faster. But then I think that what we need to talk about is not that. We need to talk about what the solution will be. And I don't think that just bubbles and safety rooms will be that solution. I think we need to find creative ways to help people communicate and start talking to each other in much more civil ways.
Yeah, and for me, there's a very interesting. What I'm watching with really a lot of interest is the fact whether we will have photorealistic avatars of ourselves, which would solve some of the problems. I think at work it would. Instead of us having meetings on Zoom and Teams in 2D environments, you can actually look people in the eye and you see some of their facial expressions and their emotions and body language. So this is super interesting. But the other issue is that it could even create an even faker world than it is today to some extent, because people can hide behind avatars that don't look like them at all, or where they edit themselves into what they would like to look like. So do you think this is going to be a problem? And what is your prediction? Will we have more lifelike avatars or more fake, creative, whatever you want to call it, avatars?
Well, it depends, I think, on what you want to do in the metaverse, or what the end goal is. From my own experience, I've been to several panels in the metaverse as an avatar. And the people I met there was the first time I met them digitally. And then I met one of them in real life just a couple of months later. And we knew exactly who we were, but we had just seen this very clunky avatar of ourselves. But it's interesting how the mind interprets and fools you, right? That you're almost that person. But of course, I think that we need regulations, and this will be a lot of topics that we will be discussing over the years, because who knows if you're talking to a bot or if you're talking to a real human. When you're talking to someone in the metaverse, those are issues that we need to solve. Of course, but I'm hoping that the avatars will become more like ourselves. I would love that, at least, because to your point, it would save me a lot of time if I can do a lot of my errands from the safety of my home and not going out in the city doing different things. So I see it very practical to have, for example, a body or avatar that looks exactly like me when I'm trying on clothes. But if I'm entering a space where maybe I don't know everyone there, maybe I want my avatar to be a little bit more cartoonish, just because that's the safety layer that I'm putting on myself. So I'm hoping that we will have that depending on what we want to use it for the moment.
Lots of the people listening and watching my conversations come from the business world. They're interested in how the metaverse might transform businesses and organizations. Companies like Microsoft have definitely claimed the enterprise metaverse space as one that they are focusing on. They're seeing huge potential in. What opportunities do you see for the enterprise metaverse, and where do you see some of the biggest impacts initially?
Well, right now, I would say what every company should almost start thinking of doing is to work with virtual reality for their own in-store or for their own staff training. Because what you're doing then is that you're learning from inside out to use the technologies that we will experience the metaverse through. So we will experience the metaverse through virtual and augmented reality. And by using it to, for example, practice things that you already need to practice within your company, you reap all the benefits from saving costs and higher retention and doing all of that. But what you also are doing is that you're teaching your staff to think on how will this change, in my line of work? How can I do my line of work more efficient if I were to use this technology? And it's very interesting to see companies that have started to use this technology very early inside their own companies have also come up with some of the best ideas on how their company can be part of the metaverse going forward. So my advice to everyone is to take a look on how to use it for training and education, because the benefits there are so big, especially since the pandemic. And we don't know if we can, assemble a lot of people. We are, for example, working with one client, a municipality here in Sweden, where it takes up to 5 years to get the sufficient training for lifting elderly people. Because you have to take people out of work and you have to coordinate the time. And with the pandemic, that wasn't possible. So what we did was that we built the simulator so that you could practice this lifting techniques by yourself in a virtual reality headset, making sure that everyone could get the sufficient training. So initiatives like that, I would encourage a lot of people to have a look at, because it could be things like safety regulations or maybe something hazardous that you have to practice before. But there are many different areas that you can use the technology, and then learning from inside out perspective.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very good bit of advice. What are some of the new and more innovative use cases of VR and AR technology that you would like to see come into play more widely?
Well, I think that we have seen a lot of the projects that showcase the entertainment side of the metaverse.
Mm.
We've seen a lot of, Decentraland Sandbox, all of these fun projects that companies are doing. But I would like to see much more, and I would love mainstream media to pick that up more about these great initiatives that actually help and propel humanity and actually solve a problem that we're facing. So I would love to see the technology be used for empathy, for example. How can we make sure that everyone understands a specific topic, or the environmental crisis that is ahead of us? How can we use this technology to inspire people? How can we use the technology to actually make sure that we're building a better future for ourselves? And in the beginning, when this technology came, there was a focus back in 2017, I believe, a lot on these topics. But then it got kind of pushed away by, the NFT kind of hype, I would say. So hopefully going back to some of those business crucial elements that we can use the technology for.
So, other than trying to experiment with this technology and maybe use it for training purposes, what other tips would you give businesses in order to get started with this technology and dip their fingers and toes in and see and explore how they might want to use it in the future?
Well, I think you can always start with like thinking big and then start very small and then test it often. That's kind of my three to go to. Like think big, test often, and start small. But have the end goal of what you really, really can imagine with this technology. But start in a very small project and see how it goes, because this is going from, producing content to almost producing behavior in a way, right? Because you're doing things, you're emerging yourself in a whole new way. But then also to have a look on the how the technology actually can solve a problem that a company has.
Mm.
Do we have a problem with getting clients to our big showroom because people can't travel as much now, for example? Or how can we showcase our exceptional work or money that we're giving away to this little village? How can we showcase that? Let's use the technology to your point, to transport people to look at that. So really to use the technology to share the story that you want to convey. Also, this is a great media for that.
Very good. So, and when you look at some of the stumbling blocks and barriers we've discovered, and we discussed quite a few of those already around the skills, around having a more representative sample of people working in this space. We talked about headsets evolving. You touched on regulation. If you look at some of the key barriers and some of the things that will make the adoption of the metaverse difficult, what are those key things and how do we start to address them?
Well, I think except from those that you mentioned, now we need, I think, a headset that is affordable and that has great content on it. That's one of the things. And to your point, we've touched on them all, that I would say that I see right now are the biggest barriers for this to happen. But I think also from a philosophical point of view, we need to create a space that people want to be in. And it's very important that people who also create these experiences don't think 2D when you're creating 3D, because I've seen this happen a lot when we in the industry are overselling something. almost to the point where you think that there is a metaverse that is functional out there. And we're not really there yet. So I'm afraid that we're moving a little bit almost too fast, if you know what I mean, and not standing where the technology really has return on investment at the moment and what the vision of it is in the future. Oh, I think you're mute. Yeah, sorry.
I agree. Yeah, and I agree with everything you've said, and I think we are experiencing very similar things with all the other technologies that get hyped up. We have seen this around artificial intelligence, around big data, many of the other technologies that we're seeing. But I feel that when it comes to the metaverse, there are bigger stumbling blocks that we need to address. There's definitely a massive one around regulation
Yes.
that we need to sort out, because there would be so many regulatory challenges and that we can't even think of yet. And I don't feel that we are making enough progress in the regulatory world. I
No.
also feel that in terms of simple network capacity and moving to 5G and 6G and giving us the internet capacity to have these 3D rendered worlds that are personalized to us, that would be another really big challenge, I think, and having the computing power available to
Yeah.
create those. And
Yes.
I feel another big challenge is around companies that are current gatekeepers of our digital world. If you think, I think about companies like Apple and Google, who they run the operating systems on our phones, they run the app stores, and they have a lot of power. So how do we move beyond that and create a world where we have apps and use cases that we can use through glasses without necessarily needing Apple and Google to and their headsets to achieve that?
Yeah, sure. I agree with you, and I don't have the solution for it either, but I totally agree with you. And I think that we're also seeing a lot of interesting projects with creator economy, and to your point, also making sure that people want to be in those places is something that may not be coming from a big company who's building a space. It can come from, a smaller company as well, who really has their ear on the, in Sweden we say the railing, but I don't know the English word for it. So that's things, and also regulations. I mean, I feel that there's not enough talk around that, and regulations have to be from not only, of course, governments, but it needs to be academic and companies, and there need to be more organizations involved in it. To your point also, when we talked about going from 2D to 3D, making sure that we're making the space safe for people to be in is also something that I'm passionate about. And what happens if you get harassed in the metaverse, and that is what will be the implications of that, and so forth. We
Yeah,
have a
and
lot of work in front of us.
yeah, I agree. I was talking about the haptic suit that I was trying on earlier. This suddenly makes harassment a problem on a completely different scale, because someone digitally harassing you is bad enough, but suddenly you can feel them touching you, for example. And this is a major problem, I think, when we bring in some of the other technologies that are merging alongside some of the extended reality technology that we've covered today.
And that's why I think, when we're talking about the metaverse, it is a futuristic concept in the future that we have this vision for, that we really want it to be. And we have all of these different projects and little islands of different metaverses or experiences now, but the grand vision of it is not here, I think, for years, but we have so many different ways of using the technology to actually make great experiences and great communications and great products without getting hooked on the metaverse as the vision or the end right now, if you know.
Yeah. I don't particularly like the word metaverse. I think what it has given us is a word that we can all talk about, and we can talk about this concept, but the
Mm,
concept is something different for everyone I speak to.
yeah.
And and for some people they say, okay, the metaverse is just this new 3D, more immersive digital world. In many ways we already have that. We're just evolving it step by step.
Mm,
And for others it is this digital universe where you can seamlessly go from one experience to another using the same avatar with all interconnected worlds.
mm,
I agree, we are far away from that if we ever get there.
yeah.
So as someone that works in this space and works with companies, helping them to understand some of these trends, where do you see this whole space, the VR, AR, and XR space and metaverse space, in 10 years time?
Well, in 10 years' time, I think that regarding work, education, and training, it will be more common to use virtual and augmented reality than any other training methods that we are using today. That I would say almost with certainty. I'm not sure how far we have come with our metaverse vision, but technology moves so fast, so it's pretty hard to say in 5 years or in 10 years what's going to happen. But I'm 100% sure that we're using it for very crucial parts of our businesses.
Yeah, and do you I think education and training in the corporate world is such a powerful use case. Do you feel that education for our children will be another important use case, and how do you see that evolving in the future?
Well, that depends on how and how we're using it. But I've seen some great examples of, for example, when you can, have children in an area where they haven't been abroad, for example, and to put on a headset and, see the Chinese wall and see how long it is. And I've seen also children who has difficulties in learning in traditional ways, who have bloomed when they are put in a 3D world. So I think that there's a lot to do with this technology, and I think that using it the right way could really help people in many ways to learn in general. My hope for it is that we can democratize education and making it available for everyone, regardless.
Yeah, no, I agree. So talking about hopes then, what are your hopes and predictions for the future?
Well, my hopes are that we're using this technology for enhancing the human experience and not a technological leap that makes that we are owned by again. Or I would say that the smartphones, uh, we got we skipped the class there. Let's not do it again. I'm hoping that we educate ourselves and we educate our children of their sovereignty online and how to protect their own data, and that we're using the technology to building bridges between humans, and that we're working with empathy and creativity and really, putting people together with this technology, and using it for healthcare, for everything that we have seen these amazing results. That's my hope for this industry.
Very good. Yeah, this is a lovely sentiment, and I hope that too. So Emma, thank you so much for your time today. That was a really interesting conversation. I enjoyed this super much. If anyone ever wants to re-listen or to re-watch this, head to my YouTube channel or to my podcast, where you can listen and watch this conversation, as well as hundreds of other amazing conversations about the future of technology and business. Thank you very much, Emma.
Thank you.